Good evening, everyone. Yeah. Thank you for your patience. We're working through the technical issues, and now we're just seeing that there's a loud feedback from the owl here in the room, but we'll work with it the best we can. It's definitely distracting, speaking and hearing that. So today is July 31st. The meeting is 7:05 p.m. Call it to order. And we'll start with commissioner introductions. I know we have two commissioners online. If the commissioners online will introduce themselves first, and then we'll introduce ourselves here in the room.
Zach, go ahead.
Can't do nothing with that.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Ferguson. I'm the commissioner for single member district 07. Thanks.
Yes, hey, everybody. I'm Bruce Sherman, the commissioner for single member district 02. We're on vacation now and joining you remotely.
I'm basically the west side of Connecticut. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Gore. I'm the commissioner for 34G01.
I guess. I'm James Nash. I'm commissioner for single member district 03. Good evening and welcome.
Just say that. You're gonna have to talk loud. Right there. Yeah. It's not. Go on.
He's muted. You're muted.
You have to.
I did.
Hello, my name is Brandon Gore and I'm a volunteer.
Okay, in terms of meeting procedures for folks online, if you have a question during the time of agenda where you want to speak, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function. And that function is at the bottom right of your Zoom screen. For online in-person attendees, please come to the mic. We will not have people speaking out of turn, shouting or interrupting during a meeting. The only way that people online can hear, we understand, and you know what? Let me just stop right here.
Can't hear you because it's echoing.
We understand that, but that is the only way that people online can hear us. So you're just going to have to do the best you can. We are going to have a section in the meeting where we're going to discuss the future of our meeting formats, because we're not pleasing anybody. We're not pleasing people in virtual. We're not pleasing people in person. So we'll discuss that. But right now we can't.
I couldn't hear. I heard you say you're going to discuss the future of, and I couldn't hear it because it's echoing. What
are we supposed to do?
Well, you've got to fix your microphone. We
There's
can hear you.
set up so that people can hear us in person and virtual.
But we cannot.
You cannot even get your opinion in this community because we have to
Fix it.
we have tried. But you're the commission.
It's
Ridiculous.
if you move forward, it's better. You can hear better. If you sit down.
About the tech setup in this room is beyond me. We are doing the best we can, and we have done that every meeting, we get interrupted about technical issues. We understand that. But there's other people in here that want to proceed with the meeting. It is unfair to constantly interrupt these meetings with this.
Unfair not to be allowed. We can hear you now, but it's unfair.
So, but you know what? I'm muted and the people online can't hear me.
But it's unfair if we can't hear you.
And that's why we're going to have a section of the agenda to discuss the future of our meeting format. And that's when you should bring this forward.
Could you maybe turn that the thing down? If you turn this the speed down.
The speaker is not necessary in this room. We can hear you fine.
I agree, but sir, if we turn that speaker off, the people online can't hear.
Your microphone's going on. It's the speaker that's the top.
So you can learn to speak with a bit. Now turn your mic on.
It's on.
Now say it again. It's on.
So it's on. Right. Okay, we have to continue with the meeting. Peter, come on. And so we're gonna move with the agenda, please. And we're gonna continue to ask people to be patient with us. We have terrible reception, we have terrible feedback. We are doing the best we can. So in terms of the consent agenda, we have minutes. July 24th is the only item on a consent agenda. Commissioners Sherman and Ferguson, can you turn your camera on? Make sure your camera's on so I can count your vote.
So that he suggested that.
Peter, this is really disruptive. I'm trying to get the vote for the consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, let's move forward.
What was the vote?
Everyone in favor.
Fine.
Yeah. All right. So in terms of right now, we're at the resident forum. This is a 15-minute time period. And if you guys want to talk to us about the tech issues, fine. 15-minute time frame where we could talk about that or anything else that's currently not on the agenda for about 15 minutes before we move to our next item. And I want to take the first person that has their hand raised online, Nancy Boyson. If you're,
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
yes, go on, Nancy.
For some reason,
Come to the
thank
mic.
you. For some reason, my camera isn't working, so you've got a gray screen. I am Nancy Voisin. And my remarks this evening relate to the Episcopal Center site. My property borders the Episcopal Center site. I've lived there for 23 years as a resident and raised my 2 children in my home there. A portion of the Episcopal Center site was designated as a historic landmark in February 2021, just a portion. This was done with no notice to the community of the Maret lease.
Hey, Nancy.
Which, yeah, let me go on. I think there was
Well,
a remark about
Nancy,
no interruption.
You're actually talking about something that's on the agenda.
I know, I'd like to make my remark.
Well, we're gonna do that when we have the, this is for what's not on the agenda. So we'll come back to you and you can make your remark when we discuss this entire topic.
Is there any reason that you don't want me to finish my remarks now?
Ma'am, we're trying to get this portion. The community has asked that they have the right to speak on issues, on a variety of issues. We set up this meeting in the following way so that issues that are not on the agenda can be addressed now. And then when we get to issues that are on the agenda, they can be addressed at that time. And you are talking about Maret ECC. It's on the agenda tonight. So why don't we let people talk about other issues and then we'll move on through the rest of the agenda, which you can find online. And we'll get to the Maret issue soon.
Okay, do you have an item that's not on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, go on.
Hi.
My name is Ann.
Zor.
I live 35 First Street, and I wanted to talk about the capital
Plan for
32nd and First Streets, which abuts my property.
Did I repeat what I said?
No, you're fine.
All right.
We understand that we transportation is still planning to put a 40-foot long 6 foot wide, 15 bike parking station from the northern corner, 32nd Street. Along 32nd. I've been working with families in this spot. They've yet to meet anyone who is for this, capital license documentation. We have a petition that we sent to you, and there are more people who are interested in signing it. We are asking right now that you oppose this capital license documentation location. And postpone, any ask DC Department of Transportation for postpone location there. We understand that there's no public comment process, the DC Department of Transportation has to go through, and we think there should be some kind of communication and discussion with the community about where to put a capital light shared docking station. And here we support the capital light shared docking station program, we support bikes, cycling, clean environment, and expanding alternatives to public transportation. We do understand that the Department of Transportation wants to put a capital light docking station in. First, I have to say, we're not
Too many answers. And I don't have the patience for
it. And Hawthorne. Based on the formal conversation that people I've talked to so far, considers bike riding here as not a practical or affordable form of reliable transportation. Distances are too far, regularly. It appears that most people use their own bikes and mini bikes. This location is too far to be a practical use for people outside this community. That seems to be sort of the sentiment about how we share docking station. People I talked to, everyone seems to ask why not put, if DC Department of Transportation wants to put a capital light docking station in Hawthorne, please why not work with the federal park, National Park Service to locate it. There's abundant land, there's federal park land, and that might be more of an appropriate place to put a capital light docking station. We see the corner of 32nd as an inappropriate place to put a capital light docking station. The site is on a steep hill and be difficult for the public to use in terms of use because that's a very practical spot. For the people in this particular neighborhood, this docking station location takes a small area that now has no pass-through traffic, noise or pollution, and would significantly negatively change its nature by adding a 40 by 6 foot 15 dock bike share station. This plan seems like inappropriate urban planning to us. There are potentially other spots, such as open green spaces, as I mentioned, that are abundant in the parkland community. There are currently other busy streets with public transportation, which are flat, where such a bike share dock would seem more appropriately to belong. We also think the DC Department of Transportation should provide its data, criteria, and alternatives that is considered for Hawthorne residents, so we can propose alternative options. We have sent the petitions we've gathered so far to the DC Department of Transportation and have heard nothing in response. We understand, for example, firsthand, the reason why this spot may have been selected is because of a need for sunlight for capital bike share docking stations, but the 32nd and First Street spot is heavily shaded throughout the day, so we just don't really know what the criteria are, and it's difficult to weigh in without more information. So finally, we're happy to work with DC Department of Transportation to find an appropriate spot in Hawthorne. I can't say that anyone I've talked to is particularly interested in the capital bike share docking station in Hawthorne, and we ask you to oppose right now the capital bike share docking station at 32nd and Birch Streets. If you go to that location, you'll see it's a small T where two streets meet. It's a very secluded spot with no pass-through traffic, and it seems very inappropriate. And I want to thank Lisa for your support. We appreciate your work and what you have done so far, and look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, do you all have any questions on the 32nd Street bike share location? We've been working hard to try to get some alternatives to DDOT. Do y'all have any questions?
The only thing would be if someone could summarize what she said briefly.
A very quick summary is the community is opposed to that location. And we've been working with alternative suggestions in Hawthorne. I've been talking with Director Lott quite a bit. We'll need to, I think, well, let me ask you, Zach, are you doing a resolution for the 11th, September 11th?
Yes, and so we welcome all input on that.
Okay. So, yeah, the 32nd Street probably has no support in that area. It's very highly opposed, and I oppose that location myself. And I told Director Lott that. I think we could find somewhere else to put the share station. There are some concerns that Director Lott has. He is definitely going to put something somewhere in Hawthorne. So I haven't been able to convince him to move outside of the Hawthorne area. And it's because we're the backside of the ANC. And part of the issue is the bus issue, the lack of transportation, just being basically a desert. So he wants the bike share station somewhere along that path in the ANC. But we do have a couple other alternatives that we can give him. Anyone else? Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
And on that subject, Lisa, just to note that as we put together a resolution, I think that we as a commission need to discuss alternative locations because there are cross-cutting interests that run through our single member districts. So it'll be good to have a conversation about how we see the overall plan and the locations for the bike share stations, taking into account all feedback that we've heard.
Okay. My only statement on that is we better start getting together soon. Director Lott is ready to go. And I have delayed him by several months by asking him to delay the issue so that we could discuss it, in our single member districts. So the 11th is our drop dead deadline. If you have, and I think I've sent this out on email to the commission, if you have alternative locations, get them to DDOT now. Because what they'll do is they will tell you if that alternative location is viable. There has to be like sunlight, certain distance. They're concerned about whether it's in public space versus maybe would encroach on private space. So if you have alternative locations that community members are suggesting, please get those to DDOT in advance of September the 11th, because we won't have additional time.
Right. There are members in Jim Nash's district who have comments about a bike share station in my district. My constituents are not speaking about it yet. I'll speak with them. Frankly, it's in an area that is, we don't have to talk about it now. We'll take it offline and discuss it.
Okay. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of, I think you guys definitely have a controversial one too.
But that one is, by the way, part of the entire development of the Maret Field project, looking at a much larger plan. It's not just a one-off bike shares, it's not just a standalone that's not connected to a larger development. So we can take that into account as well when we talk. I've mentioned that to Jim.
Yes, as long as that.
Just keep it shutting down the mic when people are talking to you. So this.
Bike share. There's a proposed bike share site at what? Oh, there's a proposed bike share site at Utah and Nebraska intersection, and I have heard from a number of my single member constituents. They're opposed to that location because they feel it would stain the beauty of that intersection and the view of the Episcopal school for children. And they're proposing it be moved 100 meters or so down or up Nebraska in a northwesterly direction. And I have asked DDOT if that's acceptable. And I know that goes into Commissioner Sherman's single member district. And I've been trying to talk with him, but he's on vacation. So that hasn't happened. I have not yet heard back from DDOT if that location is even acceptable to them. I'm hoping to hear soon. And if so, we'll proceed. I think that's all I have to say on that.
Okay. Let's go online to Mary Callahan. She has her hand raised.
Hi there. Just a quick question. Given the survey meeting that's coming up, is there any information about the representation of the previous survey of the neighborhood?
So you're talking about the Civic Core survey?
Yeah.
So we looked at the previous surveys. Is that what you mean? Have we taken that information into account in developing this survey?
Well, it was 1,600 some people who responded, Lisa, I think. And did that survey show any representation of where they are located in the neighborhood?
That's the DMPED survey, Lisa. It's the DMPED survey. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but who, I'm just confused on your question. Who
So
is
she's
located in the neighborhood? What do you mean by that?
I'm trying to get a sense of who responded to that earlier survey and whether you folks have any sense of that, whether there's any information about it.
So I don't have a sense of who the respondents were. And I cannot tell you offhand in terms of, I'm sure we had respondents from in Chevy Chase, this ANC, and outside Chevy Chase. All the information on the survey is posted on our website under the Civic Core redevelopment section. So if you go to our main website at the upper right-hand corner, it's going to be a tab that says, I believe Chevy Chase Civic Core. Click on that, then click on the redevelopment. So there'll be like 4 drop downs. And I think it's the first drop down. I believe the DMPED survey results in like a summary of the survey is in that website information.
Okay, but does that include any information about demographics, or
It
do we
might.
not have that
It
data?
might. I don't know right offhand, and I don't want to give you the wrong information, but everything that DMPED gave us in regard to that survey is on that website.
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Okay, any more folks in person? Going once, twice, 3 times. Any other folks online have anything to share? Okay, great. We'll move on. Thank you. I appreciate that. So the first item up for discussion, commissioners, I'm gonna turn this over to Commissioner Sherman. And I know there's a community member present that's also been working on this issue, is the discussion and possible vote on a draft resolution for 6008 34th. I think that's place or street. And it's a Raze application that was submitted after the fact. Commissioner Sherman, do you want to give an overview of that for the community, and then we'll take a discussion and vote?
Commissioner, just before you see, we're hearing to people online, the way we're getting some reduction in feedback. Turning down the mic when we speak, then I have to turn it up when online speak. So just pace yourself a little slow, so I can go back and forth at the right places. That.
Great. Are we ready, Lisa?
Go.
Yep.
Okay. The simple introduction, and I will give a brief overview and then turn to our constituent and neighbor, Nina Dodge, who has done incredible work on this initiative and this problem in the neighborhood. This is again 6008 34th Place. It's the development of a single family home. The original permit was for a demolition. However, the developer proceeded to essentially raise the property. There have been a number of stop work orders, 2 stop work orders on the property that the neighbors have, and with Michael Zeldin and my support, called Department of Buildings attention to. So what we're looking at now is a situation in which the developer is applying for an after the fact raise application. And our resolution, which Nina can speak to again, is one to say that the developer should have to reapply entirely and not be granted the grandfathered setbacks that attended to a demolition project when in fact he's raised the building. If you understand what this means, the interest on his part was to preserve the setbacks that attach to previous zoning by just doing a demolition. But he's taken the property, the building down so far that it's become a raise, violating the permit, and now is at a place where in reapplying, we want to ensure that the application goes forward as an entirely new project with current setbacks. In other words, meeting current zoning regulations. We will note that we have liaised with the Department of Buildings through the Office of Council Member Janice Lewis George. Will Singer, her policy advisors have been incredibly helpful. We received notice from him just this afternoon, in fact, that the DOB officials are mindful of our resolution, they're mindful of the problem, and they actually encourage the commission to proceed with the resolution. So let me turn it over to Nina Dodge for further explanation. Again, just to introduce Nina, she is a neighbor in that cul-de-sac on 34th Place, and she's done very painstaking work to document the history of the property. Nina, if you're there, please come on and give us your summary. And thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for introducing this, Bruce, and your work on this, along with that of Michael Zeldin. Lisa, you've been involved in the detail work, as is Zachary. And I'm sorry, Zachary, I'm blanking out on your Ferguson. and with some very good doing due diligence questions. So I really respect the way the ANC process expedites this kind of resolution, and really more power to you. I've been very impressed. Really, I think Bruce said it all. Essentially, the developer, some of you might be, is developing a house on 34th Place. It was developed in 1931 as a cul-de-sac development with 10 houses, all by the same developer on a very small area of land with very, very narrow setbacks between the properties. And the houses are in very good shape. Unfortunately, this one had been let go, was not in good shape. And the owner, former owner, needed to do a quick sale because of being very ill. And so it wasn't surprising that a developer bought it. And we neighbors knew that it was likely for a developer to buy it. And we knew what was going on in the neighborhood with the types of buildings going up. And so we were vigilant right from the very beginning, following exactly what was happening. So a number of us kind of banded together and followed all the steps. The adjoining neighbors were very, very diligent in submitting their comments by requirement, as required in the process, etc. And so when and we actually, as well as other neighbors, were very dismayed by the scale of the development. And this is something that's happening all over DC and certainly our neighborhood. But we learned that what was by right for the developer in terms of what might seem, overbuilt to some of us, but that in fact zoning and the regulations allow for. And then we learned what was not by right. And and there was back and forth with Department of Buildings and so on, ANC members on this. We had a chance to talk with this, about this with the developers in an ANC forum that Bruce Sherman organized. That was very, very helpful. There were Department of Building people present. So to the fast forward, the developer started demolishing the building, having obtained his permit, and it was effective in the beginning of January. After the winter season, he started to take it down in April. And more and more concern was raised by not only people in the cul-de-sac, but by contractors coming to do work on other people's houses saying, wait, what's going on with that house? It looks like it's being taken all the way down, blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, we followed up. We did some measuring. We went through the codes and contacted the Department of Building and said, we think this has gone well beyond what was permitted. And the first, so that the first stop work order was issued. I won't go into all the details, it's in the resolution. But just to say that, to clarify a little bit what Bruce was saying for some of you, a 5-foot setback from adjoining property is what most of our houses have, and from 1931. And if the developer had stuck to what was permitted in how far he took the house down, i.e. not all the way down, and it's very, very specific in the regulations. A layperson can read them and understand them and measure and so on. The developer loses, and so by keeping to the quote unquote demolition versus raise, the developer has the right, by right, to build up, keeping the same footprint. So he wants to build 3 stories up and he can maintain that 5-foot setback. But a raise, which goes beyond what's permitted, and as I say, it's very specific regulations, means that the developer loses their right to all grandfathered codes, including setbacks, and needs to submit new plans, in this case, new designs that conform to current code. Current code in the case of property setbacks is 8 feet, as many of you know. So in fact, the developer's losing quite a big chunk. But the developer not only took it too far down, but after an initial inspector who deemed that, or a second, whatever, there was a whole bunch of inspections. We're not quite sure why DOB repeated an inspection and then kind of reversed their judgment. But after that happened, which we were very, it was quite confounding. The developer resumed demolition and construction, pouring foundations, so on, but took more down. And so we documented all of this photographically and, in writing, and submitted, a query to the Department of Building saying this guy's continued to take more down after something that was clearly borderline, whatever, et cetera. And anyway, so they said they would send somebody again to double check. There was a delay, and that's when our ANC reps got Janice Lewis George's office involved. They came over and saw it, and as everybody who was looking at this, knowing what some of the perimeters allowed for, generally just, they went to bat for us with DOB and got an inspector there the next day after their visit, and the inspector made the judgment that we had expected. And put up another notice went up. So that's where we are. And it's kind of laying fallow, and the developer has asked for, as Bruce said, a raised permit after the fact, retroactive. We weren't quite sure what that meant. Neither did others who are in the building business. And we'd consulted with developers, design build folks who were very often on the other side than we were, to make sure we understood and didn't bother everybody with things that were, allowed for instance. So we kept very clear to the issue of what's not allowed by right. And this developer.
Hey, Nina, it's Bruce. Just let me kind of interrupt one quick second to, I think we've pretty much captured the gist of this for everybody. And I know we have limited time
Yeah, I'm
tonight.
sorry, I
No,
went.
no, you're good. It's great color and we want to hear about that. But I do want to go to commissioner questions or any community questions. And Lisa, I can read the passage from the resolution to make it crystal clear what we're asking for, if that would be helpful. So as the language states in the resolve section of the resolution, again, commissioners have seen this, members of the public perhaps not yet, that we're calling on the Department of Buildings to revoke the existing addition, alteration, and repair permit because the existing structure, in fact, has been raised, requiring the construction of a new home in its place. DOB, Department of Buildings, should therefore require the applicant to obtain a new building permit for the construction of a new single-family home, subject to the requirements of all applicable and or other codes relevant to this construction currently in effect, with no grandfathering rights, particularly as to setback requirements. So that just encapsulates some of what we were just saying. And I think we probably, if I've missed anything, Nina, and we have to add anything that's critical, we can do it. Otherwise, we can go to commissioner questions or comments from the public. So Lisa, back to you guys.
Commissioner Nan.
Myself set up here. Was the developer informed that we would be addressing this issue at this meeting?
So I'll answer that. I sent the developer an email. I believe the developer's name is Taiwo Demirin. Taiwo responded probably within the next 2 days, said they were out of the country. I responded back to Taiwo and told them that they could still participate in the meeting by submitting the public comment form, which goes to all ANC commissioners about, their concerns with the resolution or any additional information that they wanted to add concerning this debate. I just checked my email because I wanted to make sure that I gave him to the last minute and didn't see anything. So they never responded. So they are out of the country, but they did respond on the first occasion. I gave them a way that they could respond automatically, even being out of the country, to the commission, and we didn't get anything back.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other commissioner questions? Gossam? Okay. Commissioner Ferguson, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Nina, very much. That was very helpful.
Okay. So with that being said, I'm going to call for the vote. I move that we adopt the resolution put forth by Commissioners Zeldin and Sherman on 6008 34th place. Do I have a second? Okay, commissioners, show of vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, that's all. 5-0. Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner Sherman.
Thank you. Thank you, Nina, very much. And also, Lisa, if I could say, there are other members of the community that live on 34th Place adjacent to Nina who have been very helpful, very much involved in this. I know she mentioned this, but I do want to underscore the extremely helpful citizen activism to document this case and bring it to the community's attention. So really hats off to the community.
Yeah, thank you, Nina. Stuart, I see your hand raised. Is it relating to this issue?
Yes, sorry, I had to get off mute and get a camera on. I just wanted to, I appreciate the difficulties you're dealing with over there very much. We've talked to the ANC, we've testified before the BZA. We've had on our little half block between Morrison and McKinley on 39th Street, 5 of the 9 homes have had major renovations in our years living here. And the experience you're having there for us is typical. And the fact that Dumped renamed their organization was just moving deck chairs around. I imagine most of the same people are still there. They don't really care what the citizens think. They care what the developers think. They do whatever they can to bend over backwards to give the developers what they want. We have spent untold hours writing and emailing and meeting in person being stonewalled by what was then DCRA. So I'm so sorry what you're going through, but I can tell you it is not unique. And it's one of the reasons why we get so exercised about all the development plans in the neighborhood for the commercial corridor.
Because we don't trust the BZA and we don't trust the developers.
And the Office of Planning, you know, there's an illegal structure adjacent, like 6 inches from our property line, which is an illegal building, which was constructed without permits, went to the BZA, Office of Planning, and BZA decided, well, it's already built. So
Let it go.
sure, it doesn't have any setbacks, but you know, it's already there. And so, gosh, it would be a big deal to have them take it down. So I stick to your guns. I think this resolution is very important.
And appreciate that you guys are standing up, because the past ANC did not stand up on any of those other constructions except Peter. And Peter,
Right.
we appreciate
And
your
yes,
help on that.
Yes, absolutely. Peter helped us on one of the big, most recent renovation where they added a 3rd story where they were building an illegal deck
And
on
they
the
also
back.
built onto other people's property.
Yeah, anyway, so again, sorry
It-
for what you're going through.
but
Appreciate
it's
how
not
challenging
shocking.
it is. And thank you, ANC, for bringing the resolution forward, and keep this in mind when we're talking about massive amount of development on the commercial corridor, because this is typical behavior from the DC government vis-a-vis developers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Lisa, just one more quick comment. The developer on 34th Place is the same developer for the 2 very large overbuilt houses on 30th Street that dozens of my constituents have raised very serious concerns about. That was the genesis of our original Zoom meeting that Nina participated in, and others from 34th Place. Same developer and many of the same issues. And we are still in the throes of moving the Department of Buildings to do a definitive inspection of those 2 houses to ensure that they're within established codes. Janice Lewis George's office is working on that. I spoke on this very subject with Will Singer today, and we're hopeful that we can finally run this all to ground. So we're on it. For the folks on the call who are listening in, we're paying close attention to this and doing everything is humanly possible to hold the developer accountable.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I think also we have to, and I definitely want us as a commission to keep pressing on this. So thanks to the 2 commissioners for their work. But holding development accountable also means holding city government accountable. They can only do what they're allowed to do. The buck
Correct.
really doesn't stop with them. It stops much higher up in government. So that's rightfully so. Department of Buildings. We have to keep this in mind when we're writing testimony, when we're doing agency oversight hearings, when we're talking about budget hearings, and we have to keep pressing the council member. And I'm not sure who is over DOB, but when we send this resolution, we should make sure that we include all the council members that need to see this, and keep holding these agencies and the council members as well, their feet to the fire on this, because development, they're going to do what they're allowed to do. And if the city government is allowing them to do this, that's what they're going to do.
Right.
Right.
Just
And I'm
also,
gonna say, Commissioner Sherman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm so glad to hear you're following up on other structures, because the current residents adjacent to our property where the illegal building went on, lots and lots of them, the new residents have spent somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 repairing things that were not done properly to code, were not properly inspected. And it's been just this ongoing.
10 years.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
no worries. And Lisa, just one final note, and that is that the developer, Taiwo Demeron, and his architect did sit on Zoom with 40, 50 of our residents several months ago for 90 minutes to answer questions about the 30th Street properties. So I just want to acknowledge that we have reached out to the developer. We've had extensive conversations about these properties and have sought to fully get their input. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Great discussion. And thanks for everyone involved in this one. So we'll move on to the next discussion, and just a little caveat. I probably should have said this in the beginning, but there's so much controversy in the beginning of the meeting. I kind of lost my train of thought. But this is a special meeting of the ANC. We have a regular meeting schedule that we vote on at the beginning of the year. But every now and then we will have special meetings to get topics discussed that maybe come up suddenly, or that we don't have enough room on our agenda, or just extra topics that we want to devote maybe the entire meeting to without uninterrupted discussion. So that's what tonight's meeting is. And the reason why we called this special meeting is not only because of the issue that we're getting ready to discuss, Maret, but also the issue that we just discussed, 600834th Place, which, like Maret, had an ANC review period that was due during our ANC recess, which starts tomorrow, which we're all so excited about.
And I'd just add to that, that the other issue that we needed to address immediately is the commitment we made, and we're just not being able to make good on, which is doing hybrid meetings. We did not want to go into the fall with our tech talents such as they are, without the option of doing other sorts of meetings. So we'll discuss that later. Later.
Okay, so with that, we're going to turn this one over to you, Commissioner Sherman. And let me just kind of give some guidelines in terms of how we typically do these. Commissioner Sherman, if you can introduce the topic, then I want the agencies basically to speak first, which will be Maret and ECC if they're here. So they will give their presentation, then we'll go to community, then we'll go to commissioners.
Right, very well. So just a very brief introduction, and then we'll turn it over for the presentation, because I think we'll want to take the presentation on board and the comments and questions that we have in the discussion, obviously. This is a matter that concerns the Maret Field development at the Episcopal Center for Children. It came to our attention, the ANC's attention, on July 12th, that the Historic Preservation Review Board had requested a review of selected instances or elements of Maret's proposed development that extend into the historic landmark ECC property and therefore would be subject to HPRB review. We heard again first of this on July 12th. Trey Holloway and Stephanie Nash and I walked the property on July 14th, got an initial report as to what the issues would be. And from there, we've had a series of exchanges regarding what actually is in play here, what we need to know, and what the timeline is. I would say generally, as an introductory comment, the critical thing for me as a commissioner now and representing my single member district is to ensure that my constituents have access to timely and complete information that they need to understand the issues at hand and participate effectively in the discussions we have at the ANC regarding those issues. And so we'll have more to say about this, I'm sure, as we go through the conversation. Why don't I turn it over to Trey for his presentation, Stephanie for her remarks, if she has some, and then we can follow up with the discussion.
On mute. All right.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, Trey and I made you co-host. So if you can do the presentation on Zoom, we also have Brandon navigating the presentation here for the in-person audience. When you're ready to switch slides, if you could just say what page or go to the next slide so he can follow you.
Okay. I will do that. Thank you, Commissioner Sherman, for giving me an opening there. Oh, 1 second. Benji. Sorry, my 4-year-old just walked in. Hey, can I get some help, please, with this guy?
Other people have.
Where's your money? Okay. All right, I'm gonna try this again. All right, so I have about 20 slides here that I'm gonna go through this evening, but I will try not to make it 20-minute presentation. I think as Commissioner Sherman alluded to, there will be some questions and some discussion on this. So we'll go to the next slide. So just a quick overview. I want to start by saying that historic review is a fairly normal part of development of your permitting process. So there's various agencies that look at your permit. One of them is the Historic Preservation Office, which falls under the Office of Planning. Anytime work occurs that is inside of a historic landmark boundary, there may be a review. Oftentimes it's a staff level review, but sometimes it needs to go in front of the full board. And that's what we're looking at here. What I hope to do here tonight is talk a little bit about what historic preservation review is, what's included, what's not included. I will discuss the historic landmark boundary that we're talking about on the Episcopal Center property. And then we'll take a look at the Maret plans, some pictures, how those relate to the landmark boundary, and talk about the changes that we have planned. Next slide, please. So historic preservation review. So I want to start off with some terminology because I will use HPRB and HPO interchangeably at times. So Historic Preservation Review Board is the HPRB and HPO is the Historic Preservation Office. So sometimes I'll use those interchangeably, but I wanted to make sure we're all working with the same terminology here. So what's included in this review? It's elements of our proposed construction on the site that occur inside of the boundary, and we'll cover that boundary later. So examples would be structures, any vertical development, heritage tree protection is a part of this particular development because there are multiple heritage trees on the site that are inside of the historic boundary. What's not included in this, HPO is very careful not to interfere in zoning decisions. So this won't be a relitigation of the zoning decision from the spring of 2022. It's not an assessment of whether or not it's okay for us to build a field next to a historic landmark. That's not part of this process. Again, it's only focused on the actual elements of construction and those potential impacts on the landmark itself. And it's not about whether or not the project is moving forward. Again, they're looking at it to say, okay, are there elements of this that we need to make recommendations on about how this construction happens in order to maintain the historic nature of the landmark? Next slide, please. So I'm going to level set things a few times as we go through this because I've spent the last couple of years looking at a lot of plans, but I know a lot of people maybe have not, and I want to make sure everyone understands the things I'll point out. What we're looking at right now is a page from the historic landmark designation that the Episcopal Center for Children filed in 2021. And so the red outline you see there is the boundary that we're talking about tonight. Later on, you will see that in purple. Right here, it's in red. The three circles represent the three buildings inside of that boundary that are historic, that are designated historic, that contribute to the landmark designation. There's a fourth building inside that boundary with the blue circle. It does not contribute to the historic landmark designation. And then there are 12 heritage trees that are kind of in the center of those buildings that do contribute to the historic landmark. And so this is kind of the initial landing spot that we all need to be thinking about. And again, you'll see this later on in purple, and I'll point that out for you. But this is the historic landmark designation that the ECC applied for and that the HPRB accepted from them. Next slide. So what we have here is an aerial view of our plans for the site. Just as a reminder for those who may not have been involved in this for a while, there's a multi-purpose field that's on the north side of the property. There's a baseball diamond kind of in the middle, and then on the south side is the parking lot. And then just south of that parking lot is Nebraska Avenue. And then on the left side, you'll see the homes that kind of sit on Utah Avenue. And if you look on the left-hand side, there's a purple line. That is the historic landmark boundary. So we were just looking at that, but that is the boundary there. And so there are elements of our project that occur on the left side of that purple line. And those are the things that we're going to look at today or tonight. So we can go to the next slide. Oh, actually, before we do that, oh, no, we are going to go to the next slide, please. So on this slide, you see the purple boundary, which mimics the red boundary we looked at a couple of slides ago. But now what we are looking at is a pink parcel, which is the parcel of land that the ECC, the Episcopal Center, will continue to use. And then everything else is what Maret is leasing from the Episcopal Center. So you've got a few things going on. You've got the purple boundary that is the historic landmark designated site. And then you have the pink parcel, which is the Episcopal Center's portion that they will continue to operate on. And then everything else is what Maret has leased. And inside of this, I have marked a few areas that we will zoom in over the next few slides. So in area 1, the elements that occur inside of that kind of circle there, we've got fencing and a vehicular gate, new sidewalk, some landscaping, and then poles and netting to keep balls in play. Area 2, there's a drain that we're going to do some work on. There's some more fencing. And then in area 3, we've got a parking lot, a curb, some fencing, and another vehicular gate, and then a portion of a dumpster pad. So something I want to be really clear about, we're going to review all the elements that fall inside of the historic landmark boundary. It doesn't necessarily mean that these are an issue for the Historic Preservation Office. They may be, they may not be, but we're just going to take a look at everything. We actually still don't, we have the HPO staff report, and it notes some areas that they're requesting the board to review, but the board can kind of ask us questions about anything. And then also just the last thing on this slide is that all of these elements that are here on this plan are things that we've talked about from the beginning of this project. So we've always talked about having fencing in between the ECC parcel and the Maret parcel, poles and netting to keep the balls in the field of play, a parking lot. So none of these are new elements. So I just want to be super clear about that. Next slide. So what you're looking at here is, we're calling it the field house, but it's currently called the Media Center. That's the non-contributing building that's on the site. And you'll see the purple historic landmark designation, and you'll see things happening kind of inside of that area. So we just want to zoom in here a little bit, and I'll give you this first look, and we're going to take a look individually at the 4 elements inside of this portion. Next slide. So here are photos of the site as it exists currently. So the brick building you see in the photo on the left is the Media Center. It's the portion that's facing the field. And you'll see that portion again in the photo on the right. But this just kind of gives you a look at what's happening on the site right now, so that you can understand a little bit about what we'll be dealing with. Go to the next slide. So I'll explain the colors that we have going on here. The orange that we have here is existing sidewalk. So what we're going to do is we're going to create new sidewalk, which is blue. And we're going to connect that sidewalk to the existing sidewalk that's there. It's about 20 to 25 linear feet of sidewalk connecting to an existing 60 or 70 feet or so of current sidewalk that's there. So it's standard sidewalk, you know, cement, that kind of thing. In red, you see fencing, and that's going to be a 4-foot black fence. The reason for that fence is that in the past, the Episcopal Center has had some issues where some of their students have moved from the area where the buildings are out into the field, and then the staff needs to go get the students, bring them back. In conversations with them, we agreed that it was best to have a fence there, not something that makes this site look unappealing, which is why we went with 4 feet tall, but something that does create that natural barrier. It's really just an operational reality of the Episcopal Center starting their program back up, and it's something that will help them, and we think it will help us as well. So we can go to the next slide. So what you're looking at now is a view behind the Media Center. So on the left-hand side is kind of a zoomed out view, and on the right-hand side is a zoomed in view. So as part of the fencing here, there's going to be a 6-foot privacy fence between the property that we're leasing and the neighbor's property there. And during the zoning process, Maret had a lot of conversations with the neighbors that lived in that house. And we agreed upon, and the BZA wanted to be very clear that we had agreed upon this, about how we would handle that border there in terms of fencing and landscaping. So we reached an agreement with them about how that would work, and a 6-foot privacy fence along with landscaping was decided upon. So on the right-hand side, next slide, please, sorry. On the right-hand side, you see a picture of the kind of fencing that we're proposing to use. So if you look closely, it's very similar to that 4-foot fence that we are using around the media center, but it has privacy panels in between there. And just for those that have been following this process along, you'll know that we are proposing 6-foot black metal fencing around the perimeter of the site. So it's all designed to match and have the black metal fencing used throughout the property. I think one thing to note, if you've walked Utah Avenue in the last 4 days or so, the ECC has installed a very similar fence on the front, in front of their bioretention area that faces Utah Avenue. So those will all kind of be in keeping, and the Historic Preservation Office is on board with that use of that fence. And so we think that this is a good material to be using, just so happens. On the left-hand side in the picture, you'll see the red, and the long red line is the 6-foot privacy fence. The shorter 4-foot red line that runs perpendicular to the long one is a 4-foot fence that will run between the building and the property line. That was part of the agreement we reached with those neighbors, because sometimes folks get back in this area. Unfortunately, they use the bathroom back there. So we're going to have that there to keep folks out and prevent them from getting in between that area. We can go to the next slide. So on the left-hand side, you see a red line here. That is where the gate into the alley on Utah Avenue is. And we're going to replace that gate with a rolling gate. This gate is going to be black metal, very similar to the fencing that we've talked about to this point. It will be access controlled by us and will run along that property line. This is something that, again, is inside of the boundary, which is why we're reviewing it, but that's what the plan for that area. Now we're going to pivot to landscaping. Next slide, please. So again, I just want to reorient you to what the site looks like now. So on the left-hand side, you're looking at the vehicular gate that we just talked about. And then on the right-hand side, you've got that view of the media center. And that's kind of where some of the landscaping is going to be installed, we're talking about. So next slide. So on the right-hand side of this slide, you see our landscaping plan. Again, you've got the purple line that designates the boundary. And then you see the various plantings that are happening in between the media center and the neighbor's house there. And then plantings that are along the sidewalk. And then in red, you'll see a ledge stone wall we're gonna put in there. So we've worked with a landscape architect. They have made suggestions about different plantings. You see examples of those. So holly, juniper, magnolia trees, some hydrangeas and dogwoods that will be there on the site. And so that's just kind of part of what we're proposing for there, but it's inside the boundary. So just wanted to cover that for everybody. The next slide, please. So poles and netting. This is something, well, I'm giving you another look again at that corner of the site. So the way, we'll take a more detailed look, but again, just orient yourself to that on the right-hand side. And then on the left side is a depiction of the type of pole and netting system that we're proposing to use for the site. You see the silver metal poles and then the black netting there. As a reminder for everybody, our zoning order allows for the netting to be 30 feet tall around the field, except on the Rittenhouse Alley. The Rittenhouse Alley is the northern edge of the property. There it allows for the netting to be 20 feet high. Let's go to the next slide. So again, you see the field house and you see the purple line that indicates the historic landmark boundary. And this time the red indicates where the netting is going to be. So you'll see how that red intersects with the purple. And we have a corner of the multi-purpose field that goes inside of that historic landmark boundary. Again, to keep the balls in the field of play, kind of keep everybody safe there. If we go to the next page, So I'm zooming back out again to the aerial view, help us reorient. So previously we were looking at area 1 that's up here kind of at the top. Now we're going to move down to areas 2 and areas 3. So closer to the parking. So I just want to give you kind of that aerial look again at what we're talking about. Next slide. So this is a zoomed in view of that, just to get you a little bit closer. Next slide. So area 2, we're going to be replacing a drain here, and I'll show you a picture of what that looks like right now. And then we're going to have more of the black fencing that we talked about earlier on. That's the 4-foot fence that kind of runs the boundary between the pink, which is the ECC parcel, and then the white, which is the parcel that we're leasing. Then area 3 has more of that fencing, a concrete curb, which I'll detail for you, and then a partial dumpster area as well. So next slide. So in the picture on the left-hand side, in the red circle is a drain. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear that drain out, and we're going to replace that drain with a bigger one. It's going to help with stormwater management in that area as well as underneath the field to have a bigger drain. So that's why we're doing that work there. And then of course, in the picture on the right, that's our engineering plan, you see the red is where the black 4-foot fencing is going to be that we talked about earlier between the 2 parcels. And then if we go to the next slide, please, area number 3. So we have a picture of what that area currently looks like on the left-hand side. And kind of, there's a pool there now, a pool house, and then a big pine tree that's right there. And then on the right-hand side, you see our engineering plans, and this one's a little bit more busy, so I'll take my time in explaining it. But the purple line, again, is the historic boundary. The blue, or sorry, I'll start with the red. The red is the fencing again. And then there is a vehicular gate between the ECC parcel and the Maret parcel that will be very similar to the vehicular gate that we talked about earlier up at the alley. The green is the curb. This is a standard concrete curb that you would see walking or driving any street in the city, 6 to 8 inches. And then the blue is an outline of the dumpster pad that we will have there. That's where, we put the trash, the truck will come pick it up. It will be screened in, obviously. There'll be some brick detailing on it that matches the Episcopal Center's red brick building. So that it's kind of there in keeping with what you normally see on the site. I will also add that we have a tree protection plan to make sure that that pine heritage tree that's in close proximity is taken care of while we're doing the work there, not only the parking lot, but as well as the fencing work that's being done there. So those are the elements that I wanted to review tonight. Those are the things that fall inside of the boundary. That's all I really had to share. And so at this point, I can kick it back to Commissioner Sherman or Commissioner Chair Gore, whoever's going to take us for the questioning.
Do we have anything from ECC?
Oh, yeah.
Stephanie?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
How are you?
Little delay. I'm well. How are you?
Good. Do you have any comments on the proposal or anything you would like to share with the commission?
Not really. I mean, I certainly want to reiterate just the kind of communication that we've had, me in particular, Trey and Marie's project. I think earlier there had been some questions in written form about sort of how comfortable we felt having them act on our behalf in terms of their nomination application. So, I just really just wanted to reiterate that, I don't know, my gosh, it's almost been 2 years of communication. We talk about the various elements that Trey mentioned, and even some that weren't mentioned that aren't part of this, their nomination, their application. So I feel comfortable. If there's any questions in particular, I'd be happy to answer them. But I will say, Commissioner Sherman mentioned our walk, and I think both he and I were really very pleased and had questions to be sure that those heritage trees that Trey remarked on that are part of our nomination on our parcel are in fact unaffected and will be protected even with that drain element, the fencing and that curb area. He was talking about all that fence that comes around the sidewalk. The picture's not up right now, but that was very important to us. And we have been assured throughout John Maret and also all the way back with the folks with urban forestry to be sure that those heritage trees, affectionately known as the disciple trees, will be unaffected by the work that Trey described. So I feel fine, but I'm happy to answer any questions as they come up.
Okay. Trey, there is a question that came in, direct message. I think you should be able to see it from Stuart Miles. If you could monitor chat. Just in terms of time, we have about 15 minutes for community and commissioners. Commissioner Sherman, how do you want to proceed with community first?
Well, I want to proceed with community first, and there are several people in particular that I mentioned that I would like to call upon who can provide expertise. I'd like to, first of all, call upon Bonnie Lepard, who is a historic preservation lawyer resident in Cleveland Park and is president of the Cleveland Park Historical Society. She will be speaking tonight in her individual professional capacity and not as a representative of the society. But I'd like Bonnie, if you would please, to come in and offer your comments as you've taken a look at the plans.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Sherman, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I thank all of the commissioners for their service. I know how hard it is. I've been going to ANC meetings for over 20 years, and I founded the Turgarian Conservancy down here in Cleveland Park and protected that land, and it's been a big community involvement piece. But I just wanted to say that I'm actually surprised a bit by these plans because of it's a really big encroachment on a historic landmark. It's a DC historic landmark. It's not just a few inches. Is the feedback coming from me? I'm sorry, is it?
You're good though. There's some feedback, but go ahead, Bonnie. We'll just live with it.
All right, thanks. So I mean, I really think that the Historic Preservation Review Board is going to have problems with this, and I would like to think that the ANC would also think about the fact that you've got this historic site in your community that's important, and Maret might want to have these, grand, perfect, regulation-sized soccer field and baseball and batting cage and all those things, but the field house is actually on the historic landmark, and you can call it a non-contributing structure, but that doesn't make it, it's still a big part of the historic landmark that they kind of seem to be slipping under the rug. And you've got very important fencing issues. To call it similar to a privacy fence, it's a wall. You've got these height issues in your fencing that are very, very significant. 30 feet is a big deal. I think that, the staff report, if you've read it, it talks about that there are some elements that extend across the landmark boundary. There's more than some. It's a corner of the soccer field, perimeter fencing, retaining walls, water management, a walk, a parking pad from the alley, these gates, and then, a huge field house. And I also think these are the first time I think most people are seeing these plans for the field house, which in and of itself should have been part of the application. That's a whole remodel, that's a whole nother project. And I think to try to slip it into this, when there hasn't been proper notice for any of this project, and to try to get it into this August 3rd hearing date, knowing that the HPRB doesn't meet in August, and then you've got it going into September, then it violates the 90-day rule. When I don't think
you're going to have to wrap up.
Okay, really quickly, I don't think the community has seen these plans, and I think the ANC would be really well advised to not push this through, rush to judgment when your community and your constituents haven't seen any of it. And you're the ones that have the power to ask for a deferral to have this come up in September when everybody would have had a chance to review it. And everybody's on vacation right now. So anyway, I would just advise that there's a lot going on here, and the staff report, if you've read it, it doesn't know what to make of this either. And it has a lot of problems with this. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I think David Patton also may be in attendance there in the room. Commissioner Gore, I think he wanted to speak as well. And Nancy Voisin wishes to speak. Let's go to David is there, I can't see the camera, so.
Yes, I don't know whether I'm recognized. My name is David Patton. I live on 28th Street.
Thank you, yeah.
David Patton, live on 28th Street near ECC.
Is that unmuted?
And I and many of my friends are interested in the same due diligence and holding agencies' feet to the fire as the people on 34th place are.
Just gonna prop this up a little more so.
All right. I want to echo what Bonnie just said. The HPRB and HPO, they're not identical. One is staff, one is decision makers. They have many questions about this referral and application. I want to note that the boundary line that Trey emphasized in the slide he showed is showing up for the first time on the Raze plans. Not at the BZA, not in any of their documents that were presented a year ago, more than a year ago at the BZA was the boundary line shown. They're encroaching on the historical landmark property in a pretty significant way. Sorry, losing my place a little bit. One of the items that the HPO staff pointed out was the netting that is intended to be placed near the field house. I'm not sure they realize there's going to be 5 acres of netting on the rest of the property, and it's going to overwhelm the scale of the historically protected property. There are mistakes and misrepresentations in the Maret filings and in their application. On May 25th, they said that they had already presented to this body and the neighbors and neighborhood groups about the contents of this material, this application material. They had not. And we're finding out these things piecemeal. The landmark boundary file was just added on July 20th to the HPRB file. And again, it's the first time we've seen it superimposed on the Maret plans.
Nancy? Nancy?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Can you hear me? I'll start over from earlier, and my apologies. I was not completely understanding the format of the off the agenda and on the agenda items. I'm Nancy Voisin. My property does border the Episcopal Center property. I've lived there for 20 years. As a lot of folks may not know, a portion of the ECC site, it's a 7-acre site, it's a campus, was designated historic way back in February 2021. This designation was done with no notice to the community of the existence of the Maret lease on 5 acres of the property. There was no community support because the community was not given notice of that lease. And the community did not support the partition of the property into 2 separate parcels. Now our ANC is doing an end run around the public for a second time by rushing a meeting to approve Maret's latest application to make changes on the historic site, of which the community was not provided notice. And they're doing this over the objection of the commissioner who represents Single Member District 2, where this property is and where this development will take place, and over the objection of the commissioner who represents us. This meeting was not properly noticed, and we've had some interaction about that. There is no ANC bylaw, and there has never been an ANC resolution of this ANC for an announcement at a public meeting. And I think there are fewer than 50 people at this public meeting for an announcement at a public meeting of another ANC meeting to be a legitimate method of notice under the ANC Act. We got 6 days notice by an announcement of this meeting, and that is inadequate. 7 days are required. So I've put my protest in to the ANC on that. They are aware of it, and I will continue to pursue that. 2 commissioners are out of the country tonight when we're talking about a really important issue, which is the one historic site in our community and in our SMD. There is no emergency. And I think we all know this is not an emergency meeting. This is a special meeting, but it is not an emergency. There has been insufficient time for the community to review this application. People are seeing for the first time that the actual field with the artificial turf, and we know the artificial turf is a big controversial piece, that encroaches onto the historic site. And folks had not seen that boundary until very recently. You already heard my neighbor David Patton mention the application. The application was filed in May, I think it was May 26th, and it had a misrepresentation in it. And that misrepresentation was that the community was notified and we weren't. And we are outraged. Now, the application
Can you
states,
wrap up?
I'm going to wrap up as quickly as I can. I have a lot to say. Now the
Okay,
application
I'm gonna give you,
says that the
Nancy,
community
I'm
was
gonna give you an
yes.
extra minute.
Thank you, Lisa. Much appreciated. The substantive changes in this application include changing the boundary of the historic site, and Trey's just gone through that, putting artificial turf on the historic site, which was something not known to the community. The staff report also raises serious concerns about the visual effect of the fencing and the netting. Yet our ANC, for the second time, is trying to do an end run around the community and the law by jamming this meeting and approval into a special meeting that was not necessary. Clearly, this site and the importance of this site was not their concern. It was not Maret's concern. The undeveloped land was their concern back in February 2021 when they partitioned this property. Maret's development is the primary concern of this application, and the ANC is forcing this meeting and forcing a vote before the public has had reasonable time and a reasonable opportunity to review and comment on the application and on the supporting documentation, which has come in so late. And I just want to finish and wrap up by saying Maret's contempt for our community was made clear back in November 2021 when the school came to our community and said, our plan is non-negotiable. And the ANC's contempt for the residents and the voters of SMDO2 is apparent in this illegal act of this meeting and in jamming this meeting in the summer and pushing a vote when it's not necessary at this time. Give the people a chance. This is our community where we have lived for decades and raised our children. Give the people a chance to have a look and to have a real look and be able to evaluate what's in this application. And please do not shut us down. It's just wrong. Thank you.
Nancy. Any community members in the audience wish to speak? We did a couple online.
We have one.
No, I'm saying any additional community members.
Hi, my name is Jenny Davis. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jenny Davis. I live at 5841 Nebraska Avenue, right across from the parking lot. I am a member of SMD2. I'm also the chair of the ANC task force to look at the field. I'm going to say just something in my personal capacity, which I do think is really important for the commissioners and everybody to hear, which is that unfortunately, and it's been really hard over these past couple of years, there is division in our community, but our community, there are people in our community, whether or not their children go to Maret or not, that support this effort and there are kids that myself, full disclosure, I have a kid who's graduated and never used this field, but a lot of us who have children that live in Maret really had a very hard time over the past couple of months with signages, with people saying things to our children and to ourselves.
there's no blame. It just raises a lot of emotion. So Bruce, as my commissioner, this is in my personal capacity, really think it's important if you're gonna ask people in RSMD to come and talk about things like this, that voices of people in the community who support the efforts and who don't have concerns about this. I do, honestly, full disclosure, with official and non-official hat, wish this process had been cleaner. I think it has been admitted to by Maret and by the ANC, but the BZA has approved this process to go forward. There are some questions to ask. I think explanation I was satisfied with because it seems very close to lines and it keeps business going there and it moves forward. And I would like to get this field built just because we're now in this limbo series where there's kids accessing that field. So I believe in fences and safety for the community. And so I just want to make sure that everybody knows there are other voices. I appreciate the presentation. I do have concerns. I wish it would have had process been better. Well, everyone has to do better. And I guess with my task force hat on, this isn't in our remit, but hopefully I've been listening a lot about what Nancy just said, and notice and transparency is got to be really important going forward with everything. And I do appreciate that. So I am a resident of SMD2. I was concerned, and Bruce and I have been going back and forth a little bit about some stuff that's been in his emails, but that's his right as a commissioner. But I do want everybody to know there are other people in that SMD who support it or may have different questions than the ones that have been raised. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have a comment online. Lisa, Claudia Russell is dialed in.
Yep, I just want to make sure we don't have anyone else in person. I've been going online quite a bit. I'm gonna get to Claudia. Any other community members in person want to speak on this now? Okay, so Claudia, go right ahead. Sorry, I've been on mute the whole time. Claudia, go right ahead. I just asked if there are any other community members in person that wanted to speak, and I think we have all the voices here in person that wanted to share comments, so go on. Claudia, you're muted. You're still muted, Claudia.
Yeah, she's muted. She's also, I think, somewhere overseas.
Okay, let's go to commissioner comments. Actually, before we go to commissioners, and then we're going to have to wrap up this discussion. Trey, can you answer some of the concerns that were raised specifically regarding the May 25th notification?
Yes, I can speak to that. So when we first put our application in was, I believe it was June 12th was the date. And so the May date that's being referenced is a date around when I actually signed the application. So we received, we put our permit in April. This is our civil engineering permit effectively. And so we put that permit in. What happens is the different agencies take a look at it. They give you comments, you go back and forth with them. You may make some adjustments to your plan based on feedback. Like that's just kind of part of the process. Ultimately, our plans are what we put forth to the community, you know, really September 2021, right? Like they are substantially similar and they have been. We made changes based on community input over the course between that time and February of 2022, but the plans are what we've been putting forth this whole time, and we've made refinements to them. But now, we may continue to make refinements as we get those comments back from DOEE, DDOT, et cetera. Anyway, early May, we received a comment from HPO, and HPO said that a review was needed. We were a little confused about that because we didn't think that any of the elements were actually inside of the historic boundary as we understood it to be. So we had some back and forth with HPO. In the interim, I went ahead, filled out the application with our team. The question about, you know, did we make notification to the community about the plans? We felt as though because these plans are what we've been talking about for almost 2 years now, that we have had discussion with the community about these plans. So I signed the application in late May. We continued to have back and forth with with HPO, with some staff there, because there was actually going to potentially be the opportunity that we could move elements out of the historic boundary. As we had more back and forth with them and there was more clarity, we realized we can't actually move these elements out of the boundary. Okay, fine, we get that. I put the application in on that June 12th date. Even after that, we were still working with the HPO staff member to understand what kind of review is this going to be. Oftentimes there is a HPO staff level review. So the staff reviews the plans. They say, yep, everything looks good here. Go forth and move forward. We thought that this particular plan would qualify for that kind of staff review. We had conversations with them. It turns out that that was not the case. Once that was clarified with the HPO staff person, they said that they would send us all the information that we needed in order to make our notices. So what happens is HPO sends you notice information. They send you the list of people that are supposed to receive that notice, and they give you the methods for delivering that notice. It's either by hand, I believe, or via the United States Postal Service. So we received those instructions on Friday, July 7th, around 4:30 p.m. And we sent those notices out on July 10th to the community via the post office, and they arrived with people on July 12th. So as soon as we had that information, we sent it out. So that's a little bit about the timing as how this went in terms of people in the community being notified.
Okay. Let me go to Stephanie Nash. You have your hand raised.
Thank you, Commissioner Lisa. I just wanted to get a timeline clear. I've heard it kind of from different folks, but I just wanted to be kind of on record for some of the timeline. Sorry for the feedback. That it was actually November 12th, 2020, when the ECC as a private entity applied for our historic nomination. That was in November 2020. And then we announced talking to Maret in December with the public, December 2020. And our historic nomination is February 25th in 2021, which I do think I've heard someone reference. And we ended up signing our Maret lease in February 2021. It took a little bit before the actual National Register, if anyone has seen or heard the date of April 2021, that was more when it finally is in the national record. But I just wanted those dates to be clear and in the record in case people weren't aware.
Thank you. Want to do one more? We got. Let me do one more community member. We have got to wrap this up. The last community member, Mary Callahan, you have your hand up. Please take 2 minutes and then we're going to go to the commission.
Hi, Lisa. Can you hear me? I just think that if Maret as an institution is allowed consideration for delaying notice to the neighborhood should also be allowed consideration for delaying their reaction.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners.
I'd like to say, I'm an incumbent commissioner. So I am an incumbent commissioner. So I was there for the entire consideration of the Maret proposal. I want to remind people that this predecessor commission held something like 7 months of hearings. And Maret has provided repeatedly, and the community. Every one of the issues that Trey Holloway talked about and walked us through, every one of them was discussed in immense detail. We knew that Maret intended to use the non-contributing building as a field. We knew they had to get people to that field house. So the notion that they were going to connect the old sidewalk and the new sidewalk was before us that during our original discussion. We heard repeatedly about drains because one of the problems is that it had been left without the drains for a very long time. And we knew in fact about drains, there was a long debate about drains. I may be corrected about this, whether it was this drain or not, about the controversy about drains on the, what is that, the east side of the property. We knew that it was going to be part. The proposal here is for a 6-inch curve in that area. 65. I understand this is a big change in the neighborhood, and I understand that people feel very passionately on both sides of the issue. But this ASD, this institution made a decision in March of last year that on balance, this was a good use of the land in our city and in our community. And I think that to the extent that there's an issue about historic preservation, it will be handled by the review board. I think that we should vote to support this move by Maret and move this forward.
Commissioner Nash.
I've been a big supporter of the Maret project all along, but I'm surprised, frankly, at some of the elements here, and I was not persuaded by some of the over-the-top rhetoric I heard from neighbors, which I've been hearing all along, but the comments of Ms. Lepard gave me pause, and I have one question, or maybe two questions for Trey. How much of the historic site will be inside the 30-foot high netting?
So there is a corner there, and I'm going to hazard a guess.
Hang on a minute, Trey. Hold on, Trey.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm going to hazard a guess because you asked, but I don't have the exact number. But I think that corner that we're talking about is between, there's two sections of the triangle and each section is between 15 and 20 feet, if I had to guess.
Yep.
Commissioner Ferguson?
And I'm sorry, could I just add one other thing, which is Commissioner Gosselin said, you know, when this goes before the board, they're going to make their assessment. And of course, we are going to comply with, you know, what recommendations they have. The zoning order allows for the 30 feet, but if the board comes forth and says something, you know, you should be thinking about something different, of course, we'll do that. We'll work with them. I mean, we have respect for the Historic Preservation Board and what their charge is in terms of the city and protecting historic landmarks.
Commissioner.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Thank you to the residents for your comments. Thank you to Stephanie Nash and Trey Holloway. You know, I see you at these meetings. You both have been very generous with your time, giving us information as commissioners. I sometimes forget that your core missions are educating children. You know, it's ECC and Maret. It's not appearing at these meetings. I'm really excited when ECC can reopen and do their important work. And I just want to give a special thanks to Trey because I was not able to make the July 20th informational meeting they hosted on this issue. I had questions and Trey met with me one-on-one, duplicated his work, but I really appreciate helping me understand some of my questions. So I look forward to this vote, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Ferguson. Sure.
Sorry, one more question. And I think you answered this, Craig, but did you say that until fairly recently, you did not believe that you would be able to encroach upon the historically preserved area? And that's part of the problem with the lack of notice?
I would not say that that's part of the problem with lack of notice, but what we did not understand when I explained the purple boundary, and that's the historic landmark boundary versus the separate parcels. So, you know, a parcel is not necessarily what the historic landmark boundary is. And that's where the confusion came in for us. As we put the plans together, we were working, looking at the parcels instead of putting the plans together, looking at the landmark boundary. It was in our minds, but that's just where the disconnect came from. And that's what we needed to work with the HPO staff member to clarify. Like literally, there was an email and we said, well, here's the boundary. And the staff member said, no, that's not the right boundary. And so, yeah, I mean, like that was something, I mean, Jenny Backus said, you know, I wish this could have been cleaner, like completely sympathize with that, because I wish we would have had a very, very clear understanding of that, but we're human, we're fallible, and that's what happened.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that this is commission has reviewed the plans that Maret had, sees them as consonant with our original approval of the project and supports their continuing the project and through the review by the Historic Preservation Review Board. Do I have a second?
I'll second. I would like to offer a friendly amendment that we put the result of the motion in a letter to the board. So since we don't have a resolution.
I accept.
Okay. Commissioners, any further discussion? Commissioner Sherman?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I appreciate, Trey, your presentation tonight, and Stephanie, your remarks. I appreciate the comments of the community, and I appreciate the comments of my fellow commissioners. My concerns are both process and substance. As we've discussed, and not to belabor the point, but I want the public to be very clear on this. According to Maret's own timeline, Maret was well aware that there was an HPRB review in the offing in May. We heard about it at the ANC on July 12th, when the initial hearing date was July 27th, leaving barely 2 weeks for the ANC and the community to prepare for what we thought was going to be a hearing on the 27th of July. It's now been rescheduled for August 3rd. Since that time, since I walked the property with Trey and with Stephanie, it's been a process of rolling discovery. It is still not clear what HPRB, what the board is going to be reviewing. Trey's noted that he's not sure. It could be many things. It's also not clear at all what the implications of this particular process are for other parts of Maret's plans. The staff report notes something very specific that could have significant implications for the project overall. And that is, according to the report, that anything shown on the civil plans could be presumed approved by clearance of the permit. I've asked for clarification on what that means. I've asked to try to understand more fully what that's about. That and many other aspects of this process are still in gestation. We're still getting new information. If we compare Trey's presentation today to the presentation he gave to the community on July 20th, there are significant differences that stem from the additional notification that HPO staff gave with regard to what would be subject to HPRB review. But those issues must have been under discussion for a long time back into May with Maret, and the community never heard about it. So now again, we're in a position where we're being forced to expedite, we're being forced to rush a decision with woefully inadequate time to understand what is in play and what the implications are. And on behalf of my constituents who are struggling to this, the people who live close to the field are very concerned about this. I sound that note that this is a rush process, and I've asked that there be a deferral until September so that our community can actually understand what's at issue. Again, just tonight, we got substantial new information and we're being asked to vote, and HPRB meets on Thursday. Thank you.
So just for audience aware, we're in commissioner discussion. And I'm just going to add, prior to calling for the vote, that I don't know what was discussed here that was substantially different than that we've already known, particularly some of the members of the community. The ANC also holds some responsibility in this calamity. I am not looking at just the process side of it. I'm looking at both sides of it. But, you know, as an ANC, we didn't get our process established until the last meeting, which was the 24th. So I don't want to hold any of that against any of the parties. Nobody really followed really good procedures to make sure that the community was aware of what was going on. But we are here now. We have to get this review to the Historic Preservation Review Board by their date, August 3rd. The ANC was pretty clear at its July 24th meeting that it wanted to opine on this. It has a choice to opine or not. And right now we have a motion before us to vote in favor. So I'm going to offer a friendly amendment to Commissioner Gosselin that our motion and our support be in the areas presented by Maret, which was or the outline that Maret presented, which is areas 1, 2, and 3, and nothing outside of that, so that we're clear to the board that the scope of our approval are the areas that are mentioned in the plan that Maret put forward for us tonight, which is areas 1, 2, and 3. Do you accept?
I do.
Okay. I call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. So that's 1, 2, 3. All those opposed? 1. Abstention? 1. Motion carries 3-1-1. Okay, thank you for that discussion. And with that, we are going to have a very fast discussion about, Brandon, can you please stop? A very fast discussion about, well, not fast, we're gonna try to do this within time enough to get out. But the future of our ANC meetings as a commission, and given what happened at the beginning of this meeting, I think this is a conversation that we really have to have. I am sorry that we don't have a lot of time to talk about it tonight, but as you could see, what occurred at the beginning of the meeting and the disruption from 2 audience members has been happening frequently to our in-person sessions. We tried desperately to do the technology. And just so you guys know, not only are we volunteers, we have absolutely no support from the city government in terms of Office of ANC. There's been no one to say, here's how to set up an online meeting. We had no idea, for example, that we had to connect communications through Zoom and to you all as an audience. All of these things we learned as we went along with each meeting. The unfortunate part about this, and prior to even going hybrid, we went virtual and opened it up from a webinar to a meeting. So that meant, like, the community members that you see their faces online, Elizabeth, Sandra, which we love seeing because that actually gives you connectivity when you're on a virtual setting. We also opened up our chat. So now that allowed people to pop up. It allowed them to take themselves off of unmute, and it allowed themselves to put things in the chat, distributed it to everyone. And if you tuned into our meetings, you know how toxic our chat content has become. So toxic. And it ended up my tipping point, and you all might have saw my post on the Chevy Chase listserv about a racist chat that was submitted by a community member in our survey committee meeting. That was followed up by even more racist email. And I chose to share that with everyone so that you all see what we deal with behind the scenes. These are not things that we put out in public. I don't like discussing them in public because I know there's divisiveness on both ends, but we are in the process of discussing very divisive issues in our community. And regardless of how we've tried to deal with them, we've been met with venom. And to start a meeting where we're trying to discuss important issues. If you look at the beginning of our meeting, how much time we lost with interruptions, it's something I just can't personally tolerate. So we wanted to talk to you guys, and I told the commission, because we've been going through this discussion as a commission for some time. And as chair, I've kind of put, and I've kind of told the commissioners, I don't want to move on this until I hear from the community. That we let the community know exactly what was happening. Because I know there's going to be a post in the listserv that bashes us regardless of what we do. If we say just virtual, they're going to bash us. If we say in person, they're going to bash us. But it's really up to the community to respond and to allow us to serve the community. And we're having a hard time doing that.
Can I just add, I mean, I'd like to make a proposal, which is that we basically say that we, at the chair's discretion, we can hold a variety of different kinds of meetings. We made a commitment to the community for the very reasons that Lisa said, to go back to the hybrid thing, and we are so struggling with it. We're complicating the public debate about things because of our technology. But I think that we should say that we give the chair discretion to choose the meeting format, with the caveat that we favor in person whenever possible. That way, we, at least when we go into this fall, we have some options for dealing with them. If we turn out, there are all sorts of events running up to September 11th, which is when our next regular meeting is, you know, that you can say, okay, we're just going to do virtual this time. You know, if we turn out to have found we have tried to hire a consultant to guide us in all this, and he gave us one look-see and then has not been available ever since. So I just think that we need flexibility right now that our commitment to the community doesn't currently allow us. And so I would move that we modify our current position and allow the chair to make a decision between the three options that we have: in person, virtual, or hybrid.
Motion.
Yeah.
Peter, in other words, your motion is instead of the commission voting on which format of meeting to have.
Right now.
And instead of us voting now as a commission, we give chair more discretion to decide what is best for the summer, with the understanding that the preference is for in-person only meetings.
I think that we thought, and we heard from the community earlier on, that coming back to in-person meetings was important. But I mean, I think that there can be, if we're going to give her discretion, we can also have discretion about exactly for example, one version is in-person only. Another version is in-person, but with a video, it posts the video afterwards. Another, but we don't need to decide that tonight. What we need to do is be able to go into the fall without a sure thing disaster facing us. And I think that giving the chair that discretion will let us get started, and maybe, who knows, maybe by the fall we'll actually have a consultant and we'll have the right set of equipment and we can go back to hybrid. But I mean, we at least give her maneuvering room and don't have to dread coming up on single meeting. Not because we don't want to make fools of ourselves.
Two community members had questions.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the hybrid meeting. I love having the face-to-face interaction. There is a huge number of people. I find it very valuable, and I really appreciate what you're saying, the difficulties having technology, and I'm really sorry that what's going on. But if we all use hybrid, that would be much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to, which is, I think the important thing in being any watching TV on demand, right? So I was thinking about different options. I think, but someone can't make it, I do like the hybrid. I'm terrified of the tech for you guys too. I think it's not fair to you with all the work that you're doing, especially with like 5 huge issues. Like this has been a hotter ANC season than I've seen in many years. So I just think, thinking about when you're making your decision, I think your motion is good, Peter, is you think about like always making sure that there's a copy of the video, it gets posted fast, even if it is an all in-person meeting, taping that so that people at home can watch it. If you can try to work a 48-hour window of getting this stuff up, then people can do that. And I think you've done a good job on moderating with the chat. Chat is hard, but I think having community civility is super important for the kinds of topics that we're talking about. So I just want to say, I too appreciate all the work that you're doing, and I appreciate you asking us. And I guess my one recommendation is always done like just videos and posting, regardless of what format you use, so someone can see it later.
Okay. Is there, I second, and I call the vote on Commissioner Gosselin's motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. So that's unanimous. Thank you.
Well, what was the vote?
5-0.
Did Bruce? Okay.
Yes, Bruce voted. Okay. Yeah, oh yeah. So with that, I am going to ask that we skip the next 2 sections of the agenda and that we adjourn. We're past our time by a minute, 9:01.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
And could you help move chairs to the back, and I'll get the technology stuff out of the way. Like a junket.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Okay.